Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Believeland Prep Podcast. It's Derek Dimit here, flying solo. Cameron's off on assignment, and I'm joined by the JV head coach of the Cuyahoga Falls Black Tigers and secretary of the Greater Akron Coaches Association, Coach Derek Widuck. Coach, how's practice going here? We're about 2 or 3 weeks from season tipping off.
Well, it's going pretty good. I'm ecstatic to be back in the gym. We got a nice group of kids at Cuyahoga Falls this year. Really nice to be in the gym with them. But obviously, there's always early season frustrations. Just trying to get things in, trying to smooth things out, and also we've kind of been hit with a rash of illness this week. So we've been missing about a half dozen kids throughout the week between JV and varsity.
Yeah, it's running wild at few people that I know their jobs and schools in the area. It's that time of year when the weather changes and the sniffles and flu hits everyone. But good to hear that the Black Tigers are rolling with the punches as you have to at this time of year.
Yes.
And on top of go ahead.
Yeah, the show must go on. We open up with our first scrimmage at Avon Lake against Illyria Catholic and them on Wednesday. So hopefully we have most of the kids back by then. I know our point guard, Tim Mitchell, he just got back from a little COVID break today. So it was a nice little shot of energy to have him back in the gym.
Definitely great when the players get back and start feeling more themselves and are able to get out there and play the game that they love and the game that we love too. It's how Coach Widuck and I met each other was thanks to our Cavs fandom, all further back than him and I would like to admit to anyone. But so we'll talk a little bit about a lot of things going around in the greater Akron area when it comes to basketball. And you made mention when we were chatting a little bit before we got rolling officially about the Suburban League. So if you wanted to start there and just kind of run down the gauntlet of what fans of the Suburban League can look forward to this winter.
Well, I think you just said gauntlet is the exact right word to describe it. I don't know if we're going to have a state champion or how many district champions or regional champions we'll have coming out of the league this year. But top to bottom, the Suburban League, I think, is one of the better conferences in Ohio, period. Every single team can beat any team on a given night. I do think talent-wise, we were a little down last year, but there's a lot of returning players this year that I think are going to end up making the league very strong. Revere, they're the reigning league champs. Now, they lost a couple people to graduation, obviously. It happens. These kids, they get old and they move on with their lives. But Baron Banya, Chris Montine, both played in our Greater Akron Basketball Coaches Association All-Star game last year. Baron Banya actually was the MVP of it. I think he made 6 or 7 3-pointers in the game. And two very awesome guards that Coach Rehas is going to miss dearly. But the cupboard is not bare. They actually have John Gross's son, Connor, University of Akron. He's going to be one of their starting players this year. He's an excellent shooter. He was our free throw champion for the GABCA All-Star contest a couple years back when he was a younger man. Carson Banks was in our underclassmen game last year. He's only about 5'8" or 5'9", but he got down, man, one heck of a windmill dunk during the game. So, I mean, he's just a great athlete, great all-around player, defensively, offensively. So, I mean, they're going to be a load to handle. They got a big man, Greg Cochran. I mean, they're the champs until they aren't, and I wouldn't count them out, even though there are a few teams, including us, that have a ton coming back.
Yeah, that is one of the challenges with both high school and college. You only have the student athletes for a couple years, and then they have to move on because of graduation. But it's great when you get those guys that start playing either junior varsity or varsity as freshmen and sophomore and can contribute at that level as underclassmen. So that way, when they get to those junior and senior years, they're ready to really let their stars shine.
And that's you just said it right there. Kids that can step in and play in JV and varsity roles as freshmen are huge for a program, because then you have 4 years with them learning on the varsity floor, or at least on the JV floor and in practice with the varsity team. And that's what we have at Cuyahoga Falls this year. We have 7 seniors, and Tim Mitchell has been on the varsity floor since he's a freshman. So is Bryce Smith. So is Lee Aaron Austin. Justice Wilkes has been out there since he was a sophomore. Drew Huffman, who is likely our leading scorer. He was the GABCA Underclassmen All-Star Game MVP last year. He's been varsity player since he's a sophomore. So just a lot of kids who've been playing a lot of basketball at the highest level that we can provide for a lot of years. And they really understand the game really well. And that's one of the things that we have going for us heading into this season, is that depth of experience and talent in our senior class.
So who may be a dark horse in the Suburban League? I know it's hard to think about when you're in it, and you definitely want to see the Black Tigers there towards the end, at least with a shot at a share. But who's the team that may kind of sneak up on Revere and Cuyahoga Falls and some of the top dogs of the Suburban League?
Well, I think most people, if you talk to coaches around the league, people who follow the league, I think they'd probably like, not to double back on what you said too much, but Revere, Cuyahoga Falls, and I believe Medina Highland would probably be the top 3 teams that people are probably talking about the most. But I think it's far from a given that any of us are going to be the eventual league champs, just because of what I said earlier about it's a gauntlet. Every single night, anybody can beat anybody. Highland didn't graduate a single player off of last year's team, and they were 12-11, 13-11. So something right along the line, basically mirroring us, that they no seniors last year. We had 1 senior, and he played about 5 minutes a game, just above 500, but returning everybody, and that they look tough. I hope we look tough. And then, like I said, Revere's the champs until they aren't. But looking outside of those, I guess, front runners, even though, like I said, it's open to anybody. Copley, who their coach this year, Adam Sestaro, he is our GABCA president, first and foremost. But he was the head coach at Medina Highland last year. So he is now over at Copley. And they have, outside of the kids on our team, who I love, and obviously I'll say that they're at the top of the league, Trent Wininger for Copley. If I have to pick anybody outside of Cuyahoga Falls, that is, if you need me to name the best player in the league, it's Trent Wininger. I adore his skill set. I know him just a little through, like I said, the Coaches Association, and a great young man, hard worker, and I just really love the game that he plays. So I think Copley would be a team who I don't think a lot of people are expecting to be towards the top of the league. But I think especially in the second half of the season, once they get used to Coach Sestaro and integrating some new talent from the JV levels, they also have a kid who came back to Copley from St. Vincent St. Mary, Gabe Mansell, who played quarterback for him this fall. Really good athlete. I know him through the AAU circuit. He played on the junior senior team for the program that I coach our 8th grade team for. So I've been in the gym with him a little. They have Lincoln Brockmeyer, who played a little bit of varsity last year. He's actually a former Cuyahoga Falls kid. Went to the middle school where I coach, but his family moved out there during high school. They moved; they didn't transfer. So I give them a break on that. But Link's a heck of a player. I know the work ethic he has. I know he can just flat out shoot the ball. He's going to be a tough guard. And if you followed them in football at all in the fall, you already know what Mansell and Scooby Sanford can do athletically, and they bring the same thing to the basketball court. So I guess Copley would be that next team up for me out of that. But if you want to talk about anybody else, Barberton, Chad Hazard is their new coach. He was at Akron East last year. Some of his players from East are now at Barberton. So even though Barberton was 0-23 last year, I heard they looked a lot better over the summer. They have a lot more talent in the locker room, a lot more talent on the floor, and a brand new coach with a lot of energy and a lot of optimism around Barberton country. Beyond that, Aurora has a new coach, Cody Calhoun. He was at my alma mater, Rootstown, the last couple of years. I don't think they quite have the talent to go out there and be the top team in the league this year. but I believe a lot in what Cody does, and what Cody does is who he is as a man and a head coach. I think they're going to follow him, and I think they're going to show a lot of improvement. And again, that when I say anybody can beat anybody, I mean it. Whoever finishes in last place in the league this year, they're not going to go winless, and they could easily end up beating whoever ends up winning the league. Kent Roosevelt, I don't know how I haven't talked about them yet. My former JV coach at Field, DJ Hickle, he's their JV coach now at Roosevelt. That's his alma mater. But Curtis Black, his father was the coach back when we were in high school, back when they had Andre Polk and Eddie Calhoun and a lot of very talented players. And Roosevelt was winning PTC Metro Division championships. Well, now we have them in the Suburban League. They've got Ty Ellington. He's a senior. Jerry Lepp. Ryan Slocum, he's a big kid. He's a junior. He impressed the heck out of me as a sophomore last year. He's about 6'6", 6'7", probably still getting taller. And if I know one thing about Coach Hickle, their JV coach, it's he's going to coach up the big men. So Kent Roosevelt, I think they could be right up there because they have a ton coming back. That they had a lot of seniors last year, but the kids who did the heavy lifting were underclassmen. And I think the only team I haven't talked about so far is Talmadge. That they're always solid. They're always good. They got Caden Davis. He's going to be one of the best players in the league. There's legitimately 8 or 9 kids across all the teams in the league that could win Player of the Year. So it's going to be tough every single night. And that's what makes it so frustrating when we have bad days of practice, because I know the margin for error is going to be so slim all year.
Yeah, that parity is such a great thing, though, especially at the high school level. You don't want to. I know as coaches, you kind of like those easy nights where maybe you can play your B game and still kind of be able to pull out a 10 to 15 point victory. But as a fan of the game, you don't want blowouts. You want those games that are heavily contested, definitely played fundamentally sound basketball. That's what, brings people into the gym. And it's great to hear that, that the team that does finish last could very well give the team that finishes first, a run for their money the 2 times that they faced them in league play. So that's great to hear if you're a fan of the Suburban League or in the greater Akron area. Outside of the Suburban League, what other leagues or high schools are kind of within the greater Akron Coaches Association?
Well, outside of the Suburban League, we cover most of the national and American divisions through GABCA. So the league that we've talked about is the Suburban League American division, which is technically the small school side of the Suburban League. The large school includes schools like Brecksville and Stowe. Brecksville is actually, I don't know why I mentioned them first. They are not in the Greater Akron Association. They're in the Greater Cleveland Association. But Stowe, Brecksville, Nordonia, Wadsworth, that's all over on the other side, Twinsburg. So as you can even hear there's another gauntlet of teams that anybody can beat anybody on a given night. Solon is coming over into the Suburban League Nationals starting this year to round out their 8-man conference. So over there, I always look at Brecksville first and foremost. Now, their coach, Steve Mihalik, is a great friend of mine. Maybe that's why I mentioned him first. But they have a player who I forget where he just signed. I think it's in the MAC. I believe it was Miami, Ohio. Luke Skaljak, little lefty, crafty guard. He can really just fill it up. He passes, he shoots, he drives, he finishes. He's really impressive to watch. I had the opportunity to go watch them play in their district semifinal game last year against St. Ignatius. Oh, no, district final against St. Ignatius last year. And they ended up losing in overtime, but Luke Skaljak he was trapped at the top of the key and stepped through the trap and hit a one-legged three-pointer to send it to overtime. Just big shots all the time out of him. He had an older brother, Eli, that was on the team previously. There's always a Ganley kid out there, at least one of them. I believe Brady Ganley is the oldest one they have there now, but I think there's a younger one even down at the lower levels.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the kid making an appearance.
Oh, yeah. Yep. We were talking pre-show whether it'd be a dog or a kid, the first one to make the appearance, and there we have it.
There we have. Okay, so yeah, the Suburban League National, we cover a lot of them. Nordonia, Dominique Sanders is their head coach. He's our vice president for the Greater Akron Coaches Association. I mentioned Cody Calhoun earlier. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that he was our treasurer for the association. So that's our little board. Dave Close, Coach Close over at Stowe. He's not an official member, but the association would not exist without him. So I'd feel bad if I didn't mention him right now either. He's always making sure that we're on top of things, for better or worse. But I appreciate how much passion he has. And you talked earlier about just the competitiveness through the league. Even as a coach, I'm happy for that competitiveness, because when it really boils down to it, like, we're all of us coaches, we have the same mission. I said we all got together at the University of Akron a couple weeks ago, all the coaches in the association. We attended Coach Gross's practice. Then we got together in a meeting room afterwards, just kind of discussed the season ahead, what's some rule changes, which we can get to that a little bit later. But I said to him, we're all in this together. Like, coaching is a brotherhood. Yes, their sibling rivalries are the greatest rivalries around. So even though we are rivals, they're my brothers too, and I'm there to support them. They're there to support me. Half the things I know about, or not half, everything I know about coaching are from coaches that I have coached with, against, around, just watching them in their games. So coaches are notorious thieves. We steal everything from anybody. But back to the question you had for me about other schools around in our association. I mentioned the Suburban League National. I'd say the Suburban League National American, between that, you're not going to find a greater collection of talent in Northeast Ohio than in this conference. I mean, the Federal League, top to bottom, they're amazing. Obviously, Jackson and Hoover and Green, but we won't talk about them too much. They're in a different association.
Yeah.
But the Metro Conference, which doesn't get talked about a lot, is a premier basketball conference. A lot of those kids are more focused on baseball and football, which, as long as they're focused on something. But you look around that league, and the coaches in that league are just incredible at what they're doing. I coached 2 years over there at Field, and the stuff that I picked up from Coach Blevins at Woodridge, or Coach Sanderson at Norton, Coach McAfee at Coventry, Arsini at Streetsboro, just Jackie Banks at Cloverleaf. I mean, I was learning something new every single game that I got out there, and just picking pieces from every single one of them and just getting to know them, the people they are. Like, I couldn't be happier to have learned from those guys, because I know that they're happy to have taught it to me, and that they're rooting for me wherever I am, just like I'm rooting for them wherever they are. It's nice that when it does come tournament time, if we aren't playing against each other, we can root for each other. And I'm not a big part of like, oh, SEC. Like, I always think that's kind of cheesy. But like, I'm not rooting for the Metro Athletic Conference. I'm not rooting for the Suburban League. I'm not rooting for the Portage County League. I'm rooting for Coach Sanderson. I'm rooting for Coach Blevins. I'm rooting for Coach Little, who I went to his wedding last summer. Like, these guys have all become such amazing friends for me. I love beating all of them on the golf course every summer. It's one of my favorite things to do. By the way, Cuyahoga Falls was undefeated in terms of golf this summer between coaches. Nice. So we've got that going for us.
Very well. And that's something that I think the general population and fans don't grasp, is that, yeah, when the ball's tipped off and you're between the lines, you're competitors, but it's great to hear that there's coaches. And you mentioned AAU, and I want to ask you a little bit about that here, but it's great to know that there is that brotherhood and camaraderie, whether it be the teams, the coaches, the players. It leads to great competition, because, like you mentioned, that sibling rivalry of wanting to beat your older brother or younger brother, however it's looked at between the coaching staffs. But real quick before we move on, with the advancement of AAU, it seems to have really blown up maybe since you and I were done with high school, and now it's become kind of a monster of its own. What are your thoughts on uh, the maybe some positives, but also pros and cons of the AAU, and what it can do for athletes that want to focus on basketball versus maybe being a three-sport athlete in high school that was maybe more common 10, 15 years ago?
Well, I mean, there is no blanket answer. It's not good or bad. It's what you make of it. Currently, I've been coaching the last couple years for the next level AAU program out of Akron. We have a lot of kids from around the area now. A lot of them end up at Hoban, but we also have some Cuyahoga Falls kids. It's Akron Armor. It's connected to them, but I digress. Uh, I think, not to toot our own horn, I coached that team with Kenny Johnson, who's our athletic director at Cuyahoga Falls. He was the head coach at Cuyahoga Falls when I first got here. His brother Billy is the AD at Talmadge, former boys coach at Talmadge, former girls coach. That's how I got mixed up with the Johnson brothers, coaching with Billy first and then Kenny. But we've coached his son's team the last couple years in the spring, and we have practice 2-3 days a week, and we're not worried about installing plays. We're teaching them skills, we're teaching them reads, we're teaching them how to learn and understand the game. And I think when you do that in the spring, you can get a lot out of it, especially these kids at the younger levels, because playing more basketball is a good thing. And anything that gets kids playing more basketball, I am for that. Now, obviously, there are a lot of negatives that come along with the AAU too, but I think that can be anywhere. There can be bad high school programs where kids aren't getting what they need to out of that. And there are bad AAU programs that kids aren't getting what they should be getting out of that. And maybe they're just rolling the ball out there and there's no practices and kids are just showing up for games and the most talented team wins. You run into that all the time. But that can be at the high school level too with the OHSAA and everything. So it's not exclusive to AAU. There's just more AAU teams. So there's more bad AAU teams, just because of ratios and percentages.
Right. Yeah. And just with multi-sport athletes, there's like you said, there's no blanket answer. There's definitely pros and cons of both because you can have an athlete that goes out for football and breaks his arm or something and then he misses basketball season. But there's also that positive, I think, of kind of building a skill set or different muscles in the body and things like that come with playing multiple sports. So can you kind of touch on that from a coach's perspective of, like, if a sophomore came up to you and said, next fall I think I want to play football, are you looking at it more as, this is your one shot in high school, make the best of it? Or are you more kind of thinking like, hey, you might get hurt and then you can't play basketball and you're better at basketball? So just kind of maybe the thought process of a coach when that presented with that situation.
Well, I'm no expert. I don't have research in front of me or anything, but I've yet to ever hear a high level coach say that playing multiple sports is bad.
Right.
In fact, I typically hear the exact opposite. So I fall in line with that. The only varsity player we have at Cuyahoga Falls that plays two sports, Joey Earl, he was our quarterback. He's one of a few kids that hasn't missed a single practice yet this year
Right.
due to illness or injury. So it can work out either way. I mean, kids can get hurt. They can slip down the stairs in school, but we still send them into the hallways each day.
Right.
So if somebody's going to get hurt, it could happen in basketball. It could happen in football. It can happen in baseball, track. It can happen when they're shooting around in their driveway. It can happen when they're mowing the lawn. And so
Right.
I don't really worry too much about the injury risk. As far as I'm concerned, there are more hours in the day than these kids know what to do with. And if they want to be great at multiple sports, there's plenty of time for them to do that. A lot of times in the summer, we'll run into kids. Oh, I've got baseball practice tonight, 6 to 8. Or I've got football lifting in the morning or something. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing on the 12 hours in between that? Like, there's got to be some time to go shoot 100 free throws, go do a little ball handling, go just get some shots up, play a little, run through some drills. There's so many hours in the day that these kids are not utilizing, that playing another sport is not going to be the reason that they aren't better at another one.
Right.
So I encourage all our kids to play as much as they can. And in fact, we had a new head football coach this year at Cuyahoga Falls. Now the football program is they haven't had more than 2 wins in at least a decade, I think. So I'm no fool. I know football is what really brings communities together. Like this winter, we're gonna have good crowds, but there's a lot of passion for basketball in Cuyahoga Falls specifically. Like we had people coming out the games last year. They weren't grandparents, they weren't parents. And I'd hear them. They'd come up to our AD Kenny, he went to Falls, grew up in Falls. He's never left Falls. So he was their point guard back in the 90s, and they'll come up to him and be like, man, these boys aren't half bad. I'm going to start coming to more games. They're not quite what you guys were, but they're getting there. So, but football can do that on an even grander scale. Very little beats the Friday night lights. As much as I am biased towards basketball, I'm no fool to the reality of the situation. So we've been encouraging as much of our kids as possible to go out for the football team, because we have athletes in our basketball program that haven't been a part of football, mostly because the losing. But why not be the kids who change that? I mean, it wasn't too long ago that I was coaching a 2-21 team here at Cuyahoga Falls, and now we're being talked about as potential league champion. And I don't know for sure that we're going to get there. I don't know how great this season's going to be. Anything can happen. But just to go from there to here, it's been something. And I'd like to see our football program do the same thing. So anything I can do to help them out. I was the one holding the chains down on the sidelines home games Friday nights, marking that first down. Almost got taken out a few times. I had to have some conversations with our quarterback that he needs to run out of bounds in a couple different spots.
Right. not aim for me, aim for past me a few yards. That it's great to hear. And along with your the relationships that you have with some of the high school coaches in the area, what can you say about I know you've mentioned Coach Gross at Akron, boo, but
yeah, I'm a Kent State grad as well.
I know. Yep. So, but can you talk about the relationship between the college level coaches and the high school level coaches? Clearly, if you're lucky enough to be coaching at a high school where one of the athletes is being recruited, there's that connection. But maybe with like a Coach Feline here at Mount Union, and some of the other OAC coaches, or the GLIAC, or yep, there you are. Just those relationships, and kind of how they start and how they foster and kind of build that brotherhood and that bond throughout the levels of high school and college basketball.
Well, I mean, outside of when they start banging down our doors when they see a player they like, they provide a lot of what we do over the summer with their shootouts, because that's one of their recruiting tools. Getting us around. Every year we go to the Mount Union shootout. In the past, we've gone to Baldwin Wallace shootout. We go to Ashland every year. We went to Worcester this year. That was a great experience. So I mean, that's the way we get around. We meet these coaches. I'd hardly call my experience typical with Mount Union. I think Coach Feline was my 10th grade English teacher. At Rootstown. I was his first head coaching job. I think he was 26.
Wow.
So I met him when I was 15. And he was there at Rootstown for 2 years before he moved on to Jackson. And now he's been at Mount Union for over a decade, which is tough for me to believe at this point.
Me too. Wow.
Yeah. His son Anthony is a senior at Jackson. Had a heck of a football season, I saw.
Yeah, I had the privilege of calling a few of their games for the radio, and their opener with Mentor, and then they closed the season, of course, with Hoover, and he had good games in both of those. So, yeah, it's crazy because I don't remember him as Rootstown's coach, but I do remember him being at Jackson, and then what he's done at Mount Union has been nothing short of extraordinary. It's a football school, and basketball is always an afterthought, and pretty much since 2019 the program's just exploded. And if it wasn't for COVID, I think that team with Devontae Friga, a Black Tiger alum,
Yes.
and some of those guys, I think they would have been making a run to the Final Four like they did last year. Actually made it to the championship last year, and I think they had the lead kind of late in the game, and then it slipped away. But another great team for Coach Fuline and the Purple Rears this year, looking to make another run. Sorry for that tangent, but
it's okay. I will never stop anybody from gushing about Coach Fuline because
yeah.
I have a tendency to do the same. I mean, like I said, I've known him for 20 years now. As hard as that is to believe, his son Anthony, like I said, senior at Jackson, when he left Rootstown, his wife was pregnant with Anthony, and
wow.
he talked to. I remember he was crying in front of us, telling us that he was leaving for a new job. But he explained to us, he said, I have another kid on the way. This is like $20,000 more a year to go teach at Jackson as opposed to our little school at Rootstown. It was tough to see him go, but we understood, and I've never stopped following and rooting for him. And he's somebody that I know I can text anytime, I can call him anytime, and he'll always be there for me. And I mean, he's the reason that I want to be the coach. I want to be that kind of coach for the kids that I coach, because he was that for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there might be a kid right now in the locker room at Cuyahoga Falls that in 20 years will be sitting down with someone and gushing about you and saying, without Coach Widuck, I may not be where I am today.
That's the goal, man. That's what we do this for. Just so that we can watch these kids grow up. This is my 8th year now in the Cuyahoga Falls district. Like I said, I spent 2 years coaching at Field, but I've been teaching at Cuyahoga Falls the whole time. So, I mean, even our senior class now, I look through it. Justice Wilkes, I remember meeting him back when he was in 4th, 5th grade. Now he's 6'4" with an afro. But back then he was 4'4" with an afro, with a sweet little lefty jumper. And now he's doing our dirty work on the boards, guarding the other team's best player, and he still shoot it pretty well too.
Yeah.
But it's Drew Huffman. Like I said, he's 6'7". He's 210. He's got a scholarship to Ohio Christian after this year. Underclassman All-Star last year. In 8th grade, he was going to get cut. Our 8th grade coach handed in like the list of like kids who were going to make the team, and I was like, I said, Drew. I took it to our head coach. It was Todd Taylor's first year. He's still the head coach now, our fearless leader. And I was like, hey, I know you're new and you don't know this, but Drew Huffman is not on this list, and his sisters are both over 6 foot tall. And his sister Chelsea's about to break the scoring record here. I said, I think there might be something worth keeping.
Right. Yeah.
So Drew got kept as like the 13th kid on the 8th grade team. He hit his growth spurt, and growth spurt aside, the kid has put so much work into the gym alongside his dad, alongside Coach Taylor. Because I was gone I wasn't there for his freshman year, his sophomore year, and last year I was coaching at the lower levels, so I didn't really work with him much last year either. My work with Drew it started after he was already a good player. So I mean, his dad and Coach Taylor took him from the 13th player on the 8th grade team, and now he is in the running for Suburban League Player of the Year, and has a basketball scholarship. And I'm just remembering him as this gawky kid walking around the halls of Roberts Middle School, who couldn't get on the floor for the basketball team, to where he's not. It's just so cool to see that kind of growth. I mentioned Kenny Johnson earlier, who was the head coach when I first started here. Now he's our athletic director. His son was in first grade and he was our ball boy back then. Now he's in 8th grade, and next year he'll probably be on our freshman or JV team. And it's like watching these kids grow up through the program. I mean, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. So even though we lose them when 12th grade is over, when their senior year is over and they move on to bigger and better things, couldn't imagine doing anything else besides spending these years with these kids.
Yeah, and that sounds like a great way to end our conversation. And I know you can speak for a lot of coaches and a lot of coaches at any level that share that same thought of wanting to leave a lasting mark on the athletes that you are honored to coach, to teach, so that they can go out and accomplish great things, whether it be on a basketball court, a football field, a baseball field, or in any field that they get into career-wise. And that's just great to hear and very refreshing as a parent of a 5-year-old that, hopefully when the time comes, there's coaches and things that can look out for him, so it's not just, being a parent, but you can have that faith that when you sign them up for a sport, that the coach is going to have that kind of same love for your child.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, they're not my sons because I can't imagine that sort of bond.
Right.
But these kids are all family to me. And before we get going, I would like to just go through Cuyahoga Falls a little more, just because I know kids and the other coaches will give me a lot of grief if I don't get everybody plugged on here.
Yes.
But I already talked about Tim Mitchell. He just got back from having COVID today. He's our point guard. I quite frankly, I think between him and Drew Huffman, I think they both have a chance to win Player of the League this year. Now they might end up stealing votes from each other. But Drew's our big scorer. But Timmy is really an engine. He does so much for us. He can. I talked about Justice Wilkes guarding the best perimeter player. Timmy can do that too. He's a scorer. He's a driver. He's a rebounder. He's got good size for a point guard. Just an impeccable young man with great leadership ability. Drew Huffman, 6'7", plays outside in, more outside than in. We're trying to get him to mix it up there in the paint a little bit more. We finally got a strength trainer this past offseason, Coach Mike. Drew's put on, I know there's always the offseason talk, put on 15 pounds of muscle. Drew put on 30 pounds of muscle this offseason. He went from 6'7", 175 to 6'7", 205. And every day in practice, I'm afraid that he's going to dunk on somebody, like some poor JV kid, because he is trying his darndest to. Le'Aaron Austin is a 3-year starter for us. On any given night, he can be the best player in the league. What's going to be the key for him is consistency, that effort day in and day out. But he has all the talent to be right there. Quite frankly, I would say whether we are the team who wins the league or whether we are the team that finishes 4th and 5th, I think a lot hinges on what kind of consistency we can get out of him and how well we can coach him. Beyond that, the other seniors, we have Dakota Cleveland. He joined our program last year. He's actually homeschooled. So it's been really cool integrating him into our family. He's a kid who I go out of my way to talk to him like every single day, find out what he likes, doesn't like. We talk about movies a lot.
Yeah.
But he's very talented, little undersized as a post player, but he can shoot a little too, so that helps him bring the defender away from the basket. But he's so strong once he gets in the paint, and he has such long arms. Bryce Smith is the senior I haven't mentioned yet. Another 3-year starter. Little on the smaller guard, actually smaller than Timmy, but plays the off guard. He can change the game with the shooting, but what I've been most impressed, his attitude this year. He's really stepped up as a leader, like really taken like the role as a senior leader. He's really taken that to heart. A couple weeks ago, we brought in former Cuyahoga Falls champions, Mike Manier, who is an assistant at St. Vincent St. Mary now. He was a former head coach for Cuyahoga Falls and a Cuyahoga Falls graduate. Kenny Johnson, who was on those teams in the 90s, our athletic director, our coach. Jay Sloan, who played at Ashland University, was on the championship team in 2014. His father, Rob, also came to speak, who was the coach of that 2014 team. And I really think that their message, I think it hit with a lot of kids, but Bryce especially, I think, really took it to heart. And not that he was ever like a bad kid, but like you could tell like something changed in him a little bit. Hearing all those former champions who used to be sitting right where he was. And I'm so impressed with the young man that he is growing into right now. So much leadership out of him. And that's even beyond his skill set as a basketball player, where he is so athletic, he can defend, he can shoot, slash to the rim. It's just a matter of putting him in those right spots because he is a little undersized. Beyond that, I mentioned Joey Earl, our quarterback. We do have a couple sophomores trying to break through into rotation this year, which is difficult since we lost basically 5 minutes a game from our senior class last year. Matt Pelfrey, who team wouldn't be where they are right now without his leadership as our sole senior last year. But Hayden Johnson and Cody Leon, I think right now Hayden, he's a little bigger, he's a little more athletic, so he kind of has the edge on breaking his way into the rotation. But he's forcing our hand. He's forcing us to find minutes for him, and that's what you want to see. And I don't think Cody's far behind. Beyond that, Matt Petrie's another senior. I'll say I think he's the most athletic kid in the league, but he's just very inexperienced as a basketball player. So if we can get anything out of him defensively, offensively, he could play a big part. And then Austin Brickley, who he's a junior guard, but again, he's very small, and it's tough to break into a rotation that really didn't lose anything out of it from last year. But Coach Taylor has these guys in a great position to compete this year. Coach Aline is his right-hand man. He's been with him the last couple of years while I was away at field, and he's the one who opens up the gym at 5:30 in the morning for these kids to come get up shots. We wouldn't be anywhere without him. Coach Eckert, he was the JV coach last year, and he actually agreed to step aside and volunteer this year. He's giving up his paycheck so I can be a part of the staff. So, I mean, it's a very selfless group of coaches. I'm blessed to work with them every single day. Because it makes going to work fun, working with these kids. I mean, even on the tough days, I know that we have each other to support. So, I mean, I'm very much looking forward to this season, even after a little illness to start the year. Looking forward to getting everybody in the gym in the next week or so, and really kicking things off at Avon Lake Wednesday. Next Wednesday, we're at Green. Before you know it, we're going to be playing Copley on December 8th. So
yeah, it's coming up fast for all of us. But thank you again, Coach Widuck, for your time tonight and all of the knowledge that you bestowed on me and our listeners about the schools in the Suburban League and the greater Akron area. And it got me ready for basketball season. You know, we've been watching the Cavs and stuff like that, but it really feels like basketball season once the high school teams tip off in early December and get a few weeks in before the Christmas break. And it sounds like the Suburban League is going to be one to watch from start of the season until February when tournaments get underway. So thank you again for your time, and I'm sure we'll talk again at some point. It may be, when the season wraps up, just to kind of put a bow on the season and prepare maybe for what's going on tournament-wise for some of these schools that we talked about this evening. But thank you again for your time, and best of luck to you and your JV team at Cuyahoga Falls and all the student athletes that you guys have at your school. And yeah, thank you for everything tonight. That was a lot of great information.
Yes, thank you for having me on, Derek. You can see my handle on there. If you want updates on Cuyahoga Falls, I tweet a lot about them. I retweet a lot of stuff. What's not on there, at Akron Coaches, is the handle for our Coaches Association. I run that account. Not a lot of tweets from there, but I retweet a lot of stuff from other schools in the area. so that you can follow them. I like to promote, like I said, I like to promote everybody in this area because the better we all get, the better my team gets. If they get better, we get better. And if we all get better together, then we become the best conference, the best area of basketball in Ohio, which is the goal, right? We all want to be the best we can be, make these kids the best they can be.
Yes, definitely. And listening to you talk about the brotherhood of the coaches within your association, definitely have the pieces in place to make that a reality. So thank you again for your time. Everyone, thank you for listening. Be sure to follow Coach at his handle there. And it was Akron Coaches.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes, be sure to follow them so you are up to date on everything going on within the greater Akron area when it comes to high school football, high school basketball. Yeah, we're finishing up with football, and basketball's going to start, and sadly it will blink and it'll be gone. So let's enjoy it while we have it.
Absolutely. You have a great night, Derek.
You too.